You're listening to Story Struck. I'm Rachel, an editor and writing coach.
And I'm Nino, a ghostwriter and book coach. Welcome to our curious community where we dive into everything books and writing.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Today's topic is about building a writing ritual. So because I know we've talked about this a lot, especially in that jumping into fiction from nonfiction.
Yes.
What have you tried that you really like for writing rituals?
So I've tried a lot of different writing rituals over the years, and I feel like some of them worked better for like my nonfiction, and they're not quite working right for my fiction because it's like a different creative space, right? So like when I was in my nonfiction world, I was very hyper organized. Like I had to have like the outline, all of the stuff because I had to hit X, Y, and Z and it had to be spot on. So it was a very analytical mindset. So I think for myself, when I was kind of getting into that space, it was more making sure that like I would always write in one spot. So like here at the desktop was where I would do all of the writing. And then like that just kind of got me my mind space. I'd have my desk clear and I would have like my notebook out about that particular project. And so like that kind of signaled to my brain, we're getting into work mode. And then I would try and edit at like maybe a different time of day. So like I'm most productive in the morning. So that's when I would do the writing was the morning, afternoon would be editing, and I might go and sit with my laptop and edit just to get a change up of stuff. But I found with my fiction that obviously is not working. And so I know like we had this like awesome like Gemini writing session last week, and that just kind of really opened it up that my current writing rituals were not cutting it. And so I've been trying to experiment this week with a few different ones, and I'm not settled yet on which one's going to be like the most effective. And I'm okay with that because you have to try it out and see. So one of my rituals, because I want to get my head in that creative space and out of analytical space, is doing like blackout or erasure poetry. So like I have like my little like Jane Austen book here. And so I would go in and I would work on like a poem where I would just select specific words and you would end up with something. And I just kind of got my mind free because I wasn't starting with a blank page, right? And having fun with that. But I can see the drawback of that is that I may get too sucked into it and spend too much time.
Because you like it
like
too
trying
much.
to pick the right words, right? So like as much as I like that, I don't know if that's going to be like the every time ritual because sometimes I might only have 15 minutes to write. So if I'm doing this and I'm spending 10 minutes on that, and then it's like, oh crap, now I only have 5 minutes for my book. So my other option, and I know we talked about this, is like I have like my Freewrite device. And being able to do just a little bit of like stream of consciousness writing. And like we were kind of chatting about like connecting with my character or the story or just kind of letting whatever it is come out. And so I think maybe doing that with like a 5-minute timer is just something very short and quick. And I can keep it or I cannot. It just lives there. And then I get into like my actual writing.
Yeah, one of my clients, she talks about doing it in journaling. So like just having a brain dump journaling automatic writing session because she's writing a memoir. And it's like, well, I'm just like, it's just all about my life. And I was just like, and so you have this idea of like, oh, it's easy because like I've already lived this. I just have to write it down now. And then you get to the page and you're like, it's like a Rolodex of all of the stories. And you're just like, I don't even know where to start. So having like that journaling sesh of just like, okay, we're just going to write 2 pages of just brain jumping nonsense that maybe has to do with this. It like gets those creative juices flowing and just like, oh, this is the story that I need to put in this chapter. And then you can sit down and write it. I also really, really, really love the Freewrite stuff because with my novel, that was what got me moving. Like that's what got me connected with the flow of everything because I was able to do it outside.
Oh, that's nice.
And I actually have this on my little Finch app, which is just like this like self-care app, is just to go spend 5 minutes outside because I don't know what it does to my brain. But, like you, we're ruled by Mercury. And so, we're both very like in our heads and stuff, which is great to be a writer, but it's also sometimes, especially with fiction, hard to get into that creative flow. Like fiction and poetry, I have a significantly more difficult time writing it indoors than outdoors. And sometimes if I get into the flow because I've done meditation, I've done my like cards, and I've done, like spiritual stuff, and I've gotten into my body and into that flow in that way, then it's fine. And I mean, I did write my whole novel on my computer, and I ended up, but to start off with, to get into that, like going into nature and having the breeze, listening to the birds, and then just having that thing there that doesn't have, oh, here's a little squiggly line, you misspelled that. Honestly, it's so huge. So I think that is, those types of things are really, really great tools. Also, you said about like writing at a certain time, identifying whenever your brain is best. And unfortunately, not everyone has the capability of doing that,
Yeah.
but being mindful and of that, and saying like, okay, well, I might not be able to do my writing at 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, but on Saturday I can designate these 2 hours from 8 to 10 on my book and get it done that way. Because like, just because it's a ritual doesn't mean it has to be every day. And I think we sometimes can get a little dislodged. We can get a little bit like all or nothing with it. As neurospicy people, we know about that. um, you know and that all or nothing mentality is probably what makes that 78% of people not finish their books, so,
Definitely.
or I'm probably mathing that wrong, but you know um but yeah, I think with I found with my writing ritual, I need silence. I also, having the grammar checking turned off is huge because I have dyslexia. Grammar, spelling are not my friends, So those systems are literally why I can be a writer nowadays. Although Agatha Christie did have dyslexia and she did just fine without Grammarly, but she probably had a great editor. But turning that off stops that distraction for me, because it's one of those things where I'm like, dang it, I misspelled that again, right? Because it's like your brain's not braining. So I think that is really big. But also, like you said, with like having it be like that set location, because like you said, with fiction versus nonfiction, the way that you move into it is so different because one is more analytical than the other. And for somebody who thrives on that creative like juices, developing some sort of structure for a nonfiction work could be a big game changer.
Yeah, and I think too, it's kind of like we were saying that the writing ritual, it doesn't have to be an everyday ritual. I think we see that whenever we try and form a habit that like, oh, well, I have to do it, all of these days. And if I miss one day, then like, why bother doing it at all? And like, I have a friend of mine and she wrote her book taking 15-minute chunks out of a day. And in the course of a year, she wrote her book. Like,
Wow.
and it was just amazing how like just that little bit of time adds up. So like finding the ritual that works for you, but also being flexible in it. So maybe
Yeah.
the days where like I'm going to have, I know, a dedicated, several hours on like a Saturday or Sunday, then maybe I can do that longer ritual of doing some of like the erasure poetry before I hop in, or something like that. And then if not, I really liked how you mentioned that, that one person would journal like 2 pages. And I think that that's really important as well, is kind of putting that time restriction on it if you have that limited time to be creative. So that way you aren't just lost in that. And then kind of like me when I was trying to do that, and then I'd be like, oh crap, my like whole writing time I had set aside is gone. Like I had a great time, but I didn't achieve what I wanted to. And so the ritual kind of defeated its own purpose, right?
Right. And that's a good point too, like that 15 minutes each day. It's that same mentality of like, but oh my gosh, it's a whole book. Like it's 50,000 words, it's 70,000 words, or whatever. It's so much. And we get overwhelmed with it. And we're like, this is going to take me forever to do. But actually, all you need. So, what I did with mine is I just took 1 hour a day, I blocked it off in my schedule. And I did it whenever my son had a class. So I knew he was going to be occupied in his class. And I was just me and my book. I put in my headphones, I put in my writing music, and just got into the zone and just did 1 hour. And sometimes I really wanted to do more. And sometimes I did. And then sometimes I didn't get around to it at all. Because I wrote my book in 5 months, and it was by the end of that first draft, it was 95,000 words. And that was writing for 1 hour, occasionally more, but also occasionally missing it. And I had 1 month where I think I had like 6 days that I actually wrote. Like that very first month, I like barely wrote at all. And stuff. But like, it takes a couple minutes, it takes a little while to get into the flow, but once you get into the flow, you can pump out 1,000 words in, pretty quickly, especially if I find in some ways fiction is actually easier to write than the nonfiction, because the nonfiction takes so much more of that analytical organization and stuff. But with the fiction, it's just like funneling. Oh, and I did want to say, there's an exercise I would do if I was feeling especially ungrounded that day and I really wanted to I had a lot to do, but I was dedicated to my hour. And so I did, to do my hour or whatever. I did this a few times during that whole 5 month stretch and stuff, where it was literally just like closing your eyes, taking some deep breaths, like doing that breath work of in through the nose, out through the mouth, and then imagining like golden vines coming up from the earth, grabbing around your ankles, and then a like white or silver pillar of light shooting up into space and then connecting to the cosmic web. And so it's just like this, like, I think it's actually in Native American culture called the Great Web. And it's just like this like web of energy or something. But I did it in a meditation one time. I'm like, I'm taking this with me because like spiders are my thing. And, and so like to connect to this like great web in space that just has all-knowing, abilities or whatever, and then just like channeling in that energy, just that little like exercise that takes like not even 10 minutes helped me to kind of ground myself and get out of my thinking mind and into that kind of flow state. And that was so helpful, because you literally just don't have to do anything. Although I know some people really struggle with visualizing things. So breath work is also really great to just get in. But the music also was super helpful for me. And I even put together, I even found because mine is My novel is a fantasy. And so I actually found like a fantasy instrumental playlist, and it's just like Lord of the Rings pops in every now and then and stuff like that. And it's just like, yes.
That's awesome. I was just going to say that, like, I know some people who will make like custom playlists that are for the specific book that they're working on. And I think like too, it's important for you to try different things. Like if you just look and you can Google writing rituals and you can see like what, Stephen King does, or, what, this person and that person does, and be willing to try the different things and to see what resonates with you. Because you never know, and it might change over time. You might find one ritual that you're doing now just really doesn't suit you 6 months from now, because we change and evolve as writers, as we're growing our skills and as we're getting, more into our story. It might take less of a type of ritual to get us in there. And when you were talking about that great web, like I could just totally visualize that, I'm like super visual. And I was picturing like the tree of life and almost like the Norse mythology of like the roots and then that tree going up into the sky and like kind of like all of that. And oh, yeah, I love that idea. I think that sounds fantastic. And then one other thing you mentioned, which I think is, really important as well, is knowing like if you need quiet or if you thrive in like kind of a little bit of noise, and if it's too quiet, it's like, no, I don't like this. Like I know some people love to go to like their favorite coffee shop because they thrive on that energy around them. So like also playing with that. And like if you're at home, like I'm also someone who needs the quiet. So like if I do music, same thing, it's all instrumental. I can't have the words coming through because I'm like, whoa, wait, what? But also having that ritual and having like your family on board. So either like arranging it when the kids are going to be occupied with something else, or if like your spouse or partner's there. Like on my door, I have a like in meeting sign. So like when I put that on the door and the door is closed, like that means don't come in. Now, that wasn't always honored, right? Like that was a learning curve. But I think just really being clear and like communicating it with people, like especially if you have kids or someone, and like maybe just giving that distinct thing of, from 1 to 2, like I'm in deep writing mode. Like please do not open that door unless it's an absolute emergency, because like pretty much anyone can occupy themselves for an hour. And if that's too long, like they can occupy themselves for 15, 20 minutes. Like, they can go watch like a 20-minute show or a YouTube video and leave you be for that, like 20 minutes.
Right. And I thought about one of the things that got me to like kind of really realize how much time I actually do have available. Like even when my schedule was super booked out and stuff, it was still like, okay, how much time do I actually have available? I would look at my screen time on my phone for how much time I was on social media. And I'm like, oh, okay. I've been on social media a lot. This is literally 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 6 hours in a day.
Oh, wow.
That I was literally scrolling, and it's like intermittently between calls or in the bathroom or whatever. And it's like, we actually have more time than we think we have because time is fake. Time is an illusion, and we are all time lords, and we have a certain level of control over it. And so seeing where you are sinking your time. Oh, what was that book we read? That book was awesome, where she like did a like time audit to see where she was sinking in time.
Oh, yes. Oh my God, I can't think.
Irish woman.
Oh,
we'll figure it out. We'll put it in the description box below.
We will.
Because it was amazeballs, and also the audiobook was amazing because she reads it and she has an Irish accent. And but yeah, it was like you do a time audit and you see like, okay, where is my time actually going?
Yeah.
And that gives you a lot of insight into, oh my gosh, I actually have the time to put into this. Because that is like a big reason people aren't writing their books, is they're like, oh, I just don't have the time. And I was just like, if you really don't have the time, there are still options. You can hire a ghostwriter. You can like talk into a video. I don't, you know, like there are so many things like you can do and stuff to still make it happen. But actually looking and delegating where you need to, it's like, how big of a priority is it? And then where do you need to delegate that? So that way, because like how many parents are like, I work a full-time job, I have kids, I don't have time. And it's just like, but then they don't ask for anybody to watch the kids. They don't ask like, hey, Thursday afternoons, do you think you can take the kids so that way I can just focus on my book? And like you were saying with like the family support. That is, I think support is so underrated in the writers community, because it's something that I feel like writers tend to be those black sheep of the family. They tend to be like, what is the term? Thought daughters. You know what? Have you ever heard that term? Thought
No, I
daughters?
haven't.
Oh my gosh, it's like the daughter in the family who just sits there and thinks and internalizes all of the things, and she'll just sit there staring at the window and like thinking about all of the things, and you're like, oh my gosh, this one child is just like so like sensitive and in their head and in their stuff all the time, while everybody else is all social and da da da. But I feel like those are the writers.
Yes. Oh, I was like, that's me. Oh my God.
Yeah. And
yeah, I'll just like bust out laughing because like I'll like have a thought, like I'll literally have like my characters like having a dialogue in my head, and I'll just start laughing. My husband's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, he was just saying this and that, and he's like, okay. But my writing buddies get it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, you know, having the support of the people around you, be like, hey, we understand that you're weird and that you're like all up in your head about this stuff, and you need to get the stuff inside your head out of your head and onto paper. So we'll support you in these things. And then also having those writer friends, to when your family is just like, okay, we don't understand your book, we don't know where you're going with it. It just reminds me of the happiest season, the lesbian Christmas movie with Kristen Stewart and Aubrey Plaza's in it and stuff. In that movie, it was like the one daughter is the weird daughter, and of course she's the writer. Yeah. And that was like for years she's like talking about, and she's building this entire like sci-fi fantasy book and stuff like that. And no one understands what she's doing. No one understands anything about her. And they're always like, ugh, she's the weirdo. But whenever she meets David, what's Daniel Levy from Schitt's Creek? He's in it.
Yes.
And he starts talking to her about it as a creative himself. His character is a creative himself. He gets it immediately. Oh yeah. And he's the one who helps her actually make this thing happen. And so having that support from your family, but then also having those writer friends who get you and who can encourage you, makes such a freaking difference. Because eventually during a writing process, we get up in our heads and we're just like, is this even something that I need to do? Like, does this even have a point to it? You know, like, am I even good at this? And I mean, there's so many authors who talk about this to where it's just like, oh yeah, I still struggle with this. Yeah. Where they're like prolific writers. And they're like, yeah, I still struggle with like, would anyone even want to read this? You know? And I know with mine, other things kind of get in your head. Like my character is a shapeshifter, and I was really afraid that whenever it's published and people start reading it, that they'll use the fact that they're a shapeshifter and they start in the book as a male, and then they are living as a female for most of the book, and then they shapeshift out. I was terrified that people were going to like use that as like transphobia, like fuel.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my character's gender fluid, who has the power to shapeshift. So, like, as a gender fluid person, if I could shapeshift, that would be dope on a rope. But, you know, having writers like yourself while I'm writing this process and just like, okay, I know that I'm getting in my head. I'm thinking of the people this isn't for. You know,
Yeah.
I can talk to you and you would be like, no, 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 it's fine. It's good. It's wonderful. Like, this is going to be so amazing for these people, you know, and like bring me back down to earth because we're all up in our heads.
We are. And I think something like as like being up in our heads too, as like women and things like that, uh, it can feel like, at least for me and for some other folks I've talked to, it feels almost selfish wanting to take time for ourselves and wanting to take time to write a book. And then again, you toss it also into hustle culture. Like there's just
Right.
so many things of like taking that time just for you and for a creative pursuit. Um, that we just feel like that pressure, like, oh, well, there's so many other things like I should be doing, I could be doing. And then I feel guilty if I ask, you know, the husband, can you go do this thing? Because like normally I do that thing. Usually I'm the one who goes grocery shopping because he works a very like long, you know, stressful job and, you know, stuff like that. But it's like, and he's always like, baby, you just ask me for help and I'll do it. He goes, I want you to write your book. Like, this is going to be so amazing for you. How can I support you? But even then, sometimes I still feel that it's selfish. And it's like, I just need to ask. And I think that's
Yeah.
something that, you know, we need to, you know, work on and get better at is being okay with asking for that and knowing that our writing time is not selfish time. Like, that is part of self-care. It is part of, we deserve to not be hustling 24/7. Like it is
Yeah.
okay to sit and do something you enjoy just for the pure satisfaction and enjoyment of doing the thing.
Yeah. I recently had that big aha moment too, because you know, like I've been an entrepreneur now for like 5 years, and it's still trying to get the hustle culture of working in America out and realizing, like, you know, because we judge productivity based on measurable things,
Yeah.
right? And then they say, oh, well, rest is productive. You're like, really? How can I measure that? Like, where's the measurement
Yes.
tool that I can use to prove this? And then it hit me the other day. I'm like, when I am grounded, when I've done my meditation, when I've done journaling and ritual stuff, and just like when I'm in that state, my ability to accomplish a task goes up so much. Instead of taking me 8 hours to do something, it'll take me 2 hours to do something.
Yep.
Because I'm in a better state. When I'm in a flustered state, it won't get done. And then also, all of the other things in the day won't get done as well. It'll be a bad vibe. And so that extra 20 minutes of time for myself ends up making everything else. Like it was yesterday, I was like, I didn't actually get started on my day until like 11 o'clock. But the whole rest of the day was so insanely productive because I took that morning to just be. And that's the problem. We're so used to being humans doing that we're not human beings. And that's part of what meditation teaches you and all of that jazz. And so that also fuels your creative pursuits. And I know it's so hard for so many writers because they're like, well, I'm writing this book. I've spent, you know, this many hours on writing this book, and I've not gotten paid for a single bit of it because it's always like, how is this making me money?
Yes.
And stuff. And changing that perspective, because most people do not get paid in advance. for like right off the bat for their first book, not unless you're like Rachel Rogers. And usually what that's like nonfiction, you already have to have a platform. Like
Yeah.
if you're a fiction writer, especially, like you're not getting paid for a minute, you know? And it's and like also like with memoir, like you're not probably getting any money for this for a minute. And so it's also that's hard to build that. So I think with the writing ritual, to bring it around town,
Yeah.
with the writing ritual, having those other built-in support systems, so that way your ritual is reinforced with the support, with the community, with the rest. Like for example, after I finished my book, I took a couple of weeks off before I went into editing to rest after producing such a huge work. I mean, the shitty first draft being 95,000 words, that's a good chunk of words for
Oh
the
yeah.
shitty first draft, you know? And then having those few weeks to just like recover, and now I'm in editing and stuff, it has been so helpful to, okay, now I can start moving into things more, you know, and back into that creative flow. I think is so helpful for the overall ritual of writing, is to build in that rest time and to not fall into perfectionism, right? Like we said, when it's a ritual,
Yeah.
sometimes we get into like, oh, the building the habit, it has to be every day. It doesn't. You just have to be consistent. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. Because the more consistent you are, the more you're going to want to write. The deeper you get into it, the more you're going to crave being in it, and the less you're going to have to like push yourself into it.
Yes, it'll be easier. The more you do it, easier it is to get into that flow state. And like you said, that consistency, it doesn't have to be that consistent as in every single day. It's just every time you sit down to do that activity, you're consistent in the process of how you're doing it. It's like building that muscle memory up for writing and for being creative. And I will be very intrigued as the coming months go if you see that your ritual for editing is different for your ritual for writing, because I know for me, like I do have like a different mindset because it's a different type of creative energy that I found. So it'll be cool to kind of circle back to this topic in a few months and see, you know, how your rituals are going with that and how my rituals are going as I am switching over into fiction mode.
That is completely like, oh yeah, that's probably going to change. Cause I mean, like I have my little notebook of reminders of like, and then my reference book and stuff. And I have that like right here. I'm like, okay, cool. It's right here. And I'm like writing notes and I'm like, this isn't as fun. So it has been harder. And I think now that like kind of gives me a little aha moment of, okay, maybe I do actually need to like reevaluate how I'm building my editing ritual, because it's not as fun. So I'm not craving it like I was before. I was, once I hit that first like 10,000 words or something like that, I started craving the writing, where it was like interrupting my thoughts and stuff. I'm like, oh, I need the amount of voice notes I have are insane. And I'm already plotting out the second book, and I'm like, I gotta finish editing the first one. So, and this is why I'm so happy to have an editing friend. So that way I just have to make, okay, I just need to make everything make sense and fix the things and add the things that I know I need to add and stuff. And then I'm gonna send it to you and you can make it pretty.
There we go. Tag team. Yes. I'll edit so you can get back to the parts that you enjoy. So
yeah. Not me being like a total Gemini and you being a total Virgo here with the whole like, let me organize it for you and make it all nice and pretty. And I'm just like, let me just be in the flow. I just want to go follow the dopamine. But anyways, all right. So anything else to add about the writing routine before we wrap up?
I think that just kind of just remain open, as we've been saying, and try the different things. Because you can see just between the two of us, like we have totally different writing rituals. And we are both like kind of introverted. We like that quiet space, but even within that, we have different ways that we connect and that we we get into the zone, as we say. But yeah, I think that's kind of my final thoughts, is just be open to trying different things, and to do, as you said, be consistent once you find what works for you, but don't hyper focus that it has to be an everyday thing, because I feel like we hear that so often. You have to write every day. If you're a writer, you have to do this.
Mhm.
You don't have to do anything. You do what works for you.
Yeah, that really got me too, because I think what was the first writing book I read was Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird, and she really, really, really enforces that idea of writing every single day. And then On Writing by Stephen King also really emphasizes like the writing every single day. And while like, yeah, for the creation, like you'll end up probably writing every day, especially if you have that designated time that's like usually free, like that you usually, if you have like that morning hour that you can spend every day on it or whatever. And especially when you're like Stephen King and you're a career writer, like it's easy to do that stuff and it's joyful to do that stuff. But it's when we are, you know, parents and we still have a normal 9-to-5 job, or like we're running a business or whatever, and life gets messy. So actually, that was the other thing that I think was really helpful that I did, is I had a tracker on my phone so I can see, you know, visual person and stuff. So I needed to see, and, you know, seeing in like, what was it, February or whatever the month was, that I only wrote, you know, those handful of days. I'm like, oh snap. And so I needed to, that visual of like, okay, I yeah, sure, maybe I got 10,000 words done this month, but I got 25,000 words done in that month. And so it's slowing down, and I don't like that. I don't like that slowing down. I want to finish this and stuff. And then actually, as I got close to finishing it, I started stalling. I had like one chapter left, and it took me like 2 weeks to write the last chapter, because I'm like, but I don't want to finish. I like this. And so having, you know, that visual aid there to say, these are where you've written, this is how many words you wrote and what days you wrote. So you can see, okay, for January, how much did I write? This many times, this many words. That helps that consistency factor, because when you haven't done it every day and it's been 2 weeks since you touched your book, sometimes that's when you're like, what's the point? And you just throw up your hands, because that perfectionism takes over. And perfection is an illusion. So I had to throw it in.
I love it.
So I hope this is helpful for all the listeners. And if anyone has any suggestions for a writing ritual, or any thoughts on writing rituals or anything like that, please share it in the comments, or email it to us. And if you have any other suggestions for podcast episodes or anything like that, be sure to email us. All of the information will be in the description box below.
All right, go write and have fun.
Thank you for listening. Check out the show notes for details and links from the episode. And don't forget to subscribe and follow for more. Special thanks to our composer, Micah Silverstein. Enjoy the rest of the music.